name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paulini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly. And I am very excited because Murta Tunga is back, everybody. Mert, how are you doing?
All right, Nick, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me back, and delighted to be back with you guys. I wanted to say it in the beginning rather than the end, that I truly enjoy what John is doing with Talking Tennis, and I truly enjoy the content that you produce with the WTA. And as you know this already, I enjoy following you on social media too. So hats off to you guys, both of you.
Very, very appreciated, Mert. Thank you. Yeah, John's fantastic with the channel, and hopefully he'll enjoy watching this back. So let's talk about Madrid. I've been very excited to have you back on. Obviously, we had a great chat post Wimbledon last year, but we had very different players in that final to this one, and we've got probably a bit more of a star focus on here. Let's start with the winner of Madrid. She has now won her third Madrid title, fourth final in 5 years. Aryna Sabalenka. Is it a case of she just loves Madrid, or is she just that far ahead of everyone at the moment?
I'm going to go with the latter, Nick, because isn't this hasn't she been in the finals of every tournament this year except the Doha and Dubai stretch?
Yeah, pretty much.
Am I correct on this? Yeah.
Three out of five. 3 out of 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going to go with the latter. I think she's a step ahead of everybody else. And I will also say, no, this is with a caveat, of course, because Madrid's conditions might be more suitable to her game against perennial clay quarters than she may deal with when she's in Rome starting next week, or French Open for that matter. You know, on who knows, on a rainy, cloudy date, maybe a different story. But I think overall, if you look at the results for the last 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, 6 months, whatever stretch you would like to take into account, I believe she deserves to be profiled as someone being, you know, who's got her nose out to the finish line closer than everybody else. That that being said, I don't just want to say this by results either. I would like to point out that her game shows it too. So, you know, it's one thing to carry a title, and it's another thing to carry yourself like you carry that title. And the way we measured that for a tennis player is what they do on the tennis court. Does it fit the results and the scores and the scoreboards that we see across the year? And in Sabalenka's case, I think it does. She, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, the rap on Sabalenka was that she's just she nails every ball. She's an overpowering player, and people just cannot get those balls back. So therefore, she wins matches. And on a day where she, you know, perhaps doesn't have her timing right, if she misses a lot, she can lose also to anybody. Now, as the years went by, that turned into, well, she rarely misses, so she beats a lot of people. But now I would like to say that she's no longer I think the side of her that does many things well other than hitting the ball hard needs to be brought up to the surface more than it is at this point. You know, it needs to be underlined a little bit more, because she also hits a variety of serves, slice to the outside, kick to the outside, you know, down to tee into the body. She hits slice backhands. She hits drop shots. She hits hard cross-court deep shots as well as loopy cross-court angle shots. I mean, it's become a pleasure to watch Sabalenka, no matter what type of style you like in tennis. And so I think game-wise, she's backing up her title.
I'd have to agree with that. I enjoy watching Sabalenka now far more than I did even a couple of years ago. There, you got a little bit less sense of what's coming from her. Her match management is so good. I think you can tell with her that you just feel every point with her, but she's so good at, even though she's visibly disappointed, resetting and getting on with the next shot. And it's funny to see when sometimes she'll hit a winner and still be annoyed with herself that she got herself in that position in the first place.
Yeah, I have a good example of that. But you go ahead, keep it. You go ahead and finish. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with that. I guess that talking about her game and the way we're watching Sabalenka now and talking about the way she's added to it, does she have the most complete game on the WTA tour right now?
I'm not going to go that far because I think Muchova has better, overall skills on every single shot, perhaps, than Sabalenka does. But what Sabalenka does well, she does it better by leaps than a lot of other people. Muchova would be one example. If we're just talking about pure shot production, maybe I can come up with one other example if I think hard. But she's definitely in the top 3. Top 4, if not, if you want to really search, or I don't think even if you're the biggest anti-arena tennis fan, you can push her down far in that list. So yes, I think you make a good point. I personally wouldn't put it at 1 only because of what I mentioned earlier, but she's definitely up there. And look, she starts the tiebreaker against Gauff. In the very first point, for example, she gets a couple of chances to hit and come in. And she should have come in. She probably knew this because she had Gauff on the run, and Coco just looped the balls back, and she didn't come in. Then Coco Gauff ends up coming in. Sabalenka still wins the point with a passing shot, but you could tell that she was kind of disappointed in the exact way that you described, in that point. So the very next point, she goes up 1-love with that point in the tiebreaker, and the very next point, she gets a short ball, and this time she hits it and comes in to the net and wins the point. And there was a time where we would say, well, that's the rule rather than that's the exception rather than the rule, that Sabalenka actually prepares the point, just like you said, does court management and approaches the net and finishes the point at the net. But now what she did in that first point, in other words, not taking the chances to come in when she gets the first point, probably felt more awkward to her than what she did the very next point. And probably that's why she went ahead and came in on the next point. So in other words, this variety, this all court game is getting more integrated into her tennis persona now than it was 2 or 3 years ago. And just hats off to her and her team for, pushing the envelope despite being number 1 player, trying to develop your game. Wasn't that the praise that we always gave to the big 3, when they were on top of the game, that they constantly evolved their game, even though they were on top of the game, or to Serena when she was on top of the game. So I think same needs to be said for Sabalenka here.
Yeah. And I think at this point, given how far ahead she is, given how well she's kind of, she's added to her game in this way and kind of pushed ahead, and you're making these comparisons to these great players. I guess my question would then be, at what point do we say that she's starting to kind of define this era of tennis? Do we need to give it another year or so and see if this continues? Where are we at with it? Because at the minute, I feel like a lot of discussion ends up going on some of the more younger players that are coming through or have established themselves already. And Arena only gets talked about when she reminds everyone why she's the world number 1.
Yes. Well, Nick, let me reverse. Let me ask you this question as part of the answer. Swiatek dominated for over 2 years. Am I about correct with the timeline?
Yeah, I'd say 2 years is probably about right. 2 and a bit.
So in the second part of her domination, did we see her as in the defining role for WTA? So maybe whether the answer to that is yes or no, perhaps we need to wait a little bit longer but I think she's very close to what you described as a profile. And again, I'd like to see how Rome goes. If she goes out and wins Rome in convincing fashion, or makes it to the semis or finals, and then she goes out and wins French Open, for example, in this scenario, yes, we would have to say that she's the leader of the pack. Basically customizing what's coming behind her. Everybody's going to be chasing her. She has a large points lead now, as I understand it. But probably a little bit more time is needed. I usually say, you belong to a place if you've been to that place and you protected it for 12 months, for 1 year. And, I don't know if it's how long she's been number one exactly, but the way she's number one right now at this point, I would say that she would need to continue this for another few more months before putting the stamp on what you said. But she's very close. She's very close.
She
I don't know if I clearly explained there.
No,
but,
I think you have.
Yeah.
I think she's going to go down in history as an all-time great. Because in my opinion, you need, if you win 3 Grand Slams, you are already an all-time great. It's just then how much do you add to that legacy and what kind of context you're talking about. And to a certain extent, a lot of that will probably get decided when she retires. In the same way as a lot of these other current players, like we probably won't be sure about their place in tennis history until after they stop, unless they really rack up the slams like Serena did. But yeah, I think that's kind of a fair way of looking at it. And we're, as tennis fans, we're often too quick to jump to kind of putting someone on a pedestal and then removing, and then as soon as they fall off the pedestal, we kind of immediately act disappointed. Let's talk about the final then, because we're talking about Sabalenka's game and potential challenges to her. And I think although it didn't really happen in the first set, the second set, Coco Gauff was challenging her for it, did serve for that second set. That game did not go her way. But my question to you is like, what is it that Coco Gauff does to irritate Aryna Sabalenka? Because this keeps happening when they play each other. There's usually at least 1 or 2 sets they play where it's super close and Sabalenka gets annoyed and everything kind of coming back and Gauff being able to run it down. And she did it in the US Open final. She did it in that Australian Open semi-final they played. What is it that Coco Gauff does? And what is it from that maybe the rest of the field could learn if they're going to try and catch Sabalenka?
Yeah, I think the one that the first part of the first thing that I'd like to underline to answer your question, because there are 2 or 3 facets to that. But the most important one is obviously Coco's speed, footwork, and her ability to get many balls back. I think that's probably one that we could all underline right off the bat, right? She gets a lot of balls back. Sabalenka probably sees some shots back that she doesn't see against other players, her powerful shots coming back more than at least she sees against other players. So instead of on an average of 10 points, instead of needing 2.2 big shots per rally to finish the point against Coco Gauff, she might need 2.8 or 3.5 big shots to finish the rally. And on a given day, it's hard to do that over 2 or 3 sets. So that at some point of the match, it might catch up to her and give Coco the advantage. I think this is very close to what happened in the US Open final. But otherwise, I'm describing this as if like, hey, Nick, you can go to the corner store and get yourself a chewing gum. But no, this is not an easy thing to do. You have to be able to do that. And there are not many players that can do that. Coco is probably the only one who's able to do this against Sabalenka. And she doesn't get to do it every single time either. I think this last match was a good example. The only time that I felt Coco had any part of her teeth sunk into the match was only when Sabalenka had a little bit of a dip in the beginning of the second set for about a game and a half or 2. In the beginning, she had a bit of a dip, and Coco, being the player that she is, the fighter that she is, jumped on that, seized the opportunity, and went up a break. But then as soon as that break was accomplished, I think it was 3-1, then Sabalenka's dip ended. She went back to the high-quality tennis that she's been playing the whole time, and that meant that Coco had to do one of the toughest things in tennis, which is to hold an early break all the way to the end of the set to put up resistance against the charging informed player. And she was able to do it until 5-3, but not anymore. Then Sabalenka gets the break, and then they go into the tiebreaker, and Sabalenka wins. So that's one facet of the game. And another one too, I think Coco's forehand and backhand, the ball coming back, are not the same. When you play maybe perhaps someone like Pegula on a hard back and forth rally, you might get the same type of shots over and over again. And therefore, if you're someone who likes hard ball coming at you where you can produce some rhythm, like Sabalenka, that may be more suited to your game. But Coco, sometimes it's a high lob back on a scramble shot, or sometimes it's a counter punch backhand, somewhat of a drive flat mix on a counter punch. So Sabalenka doesn't exactly get the same shots back, even if she's got the other player on the run, the opponent, who's Coco in this example that we're talking about. So that may be the second underlying factor about Gauff giving Sabalenka difficulties. And the only other thing I can think of is someone with a big serve, which I can't characterize Gauff as. So I'm going to stick with those two.
Yeah, and that's kind of key when you're looking at that. And I think there's interesting facets that we've seen in different players who have been able to go toe-to-toe with Sabalenka. I think, yeah, you're right, a player who's able to get every ball back, who isn't afraid to try and take it to her, who has that serve, or has that ability to mix it up and give her a different ball. And I'm already thinking of the only other players I can think of who probably can achieve that are Swiatek on her day. Mira Andreeva seems to be able to do it at the moment. That's what she seems to do in Indian Wells. That's how she beat her at the French Open. And also Karolina Muchova, if we think about how good her head-to-head with Sabalenka is. And then
may I interrupt?
Some of the power players in there as well.
Yeah, may I interrupt for just 1 second? You touched on a great example there. Take someone like Mira Andreeva. Andreeva's down-the-line accelerations, I would call them the best in the world in women's tennis right now. She wins a ton of points from her down-the-line accelerations. But look, this is something that's an outlier. You have to do something that no one else does as well as you do to be able to perhaps throw someone like Sabalenka off. And just like you said, Andreeva is a great example. I didn't even think about that. And yes, you're right. She has had some success against Sabalenka, but she's able to do something that no other WTA player does as well as she does. So something that Sabalenka is not used to seeing. In the same vein as she's not used to seeing her balls come back against other players as much as she is against Gauff. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you came across as such a great example there. I wanted to.
I think that's a good point. And I think that's already the reason why we've got quite a few players at the top of the WTA, or the players that we admire the most at the top of the WTA have that aspect of them that they do better than anyone else. You've got when it's on, the Swiatek forehand and the spin and the way it kicks. You've got Gauff's athleticism and speed that means everything comes back. You've got Miller's drive up the line and Muchova's variety. I'm leaving Sabalenka off because it's very difficult to hit on a particular strength given the conversation we just had about how much she's added to her game and how she's not just a power player anymore. Yeah. It's not like that's coming back at you, everything else. I think for me, Sabalenka is probably the one who's actually perfected the big hitting game and can reliably deploy it. I can't think of any other player on the WTA tour who is able to do that as a consistent and reliable basis.
No, I agree with you 100%. And one thing that I'd like to underline also, or put the emphasis on, that I don't think gets enough credit, is how great her footwork is. Because she's such a hard hitter and she always has her opponents on the run, and she's always the aggressor, and she's always inside the court, big serve, etc., etc. We don't speak about the side of her where she gets a lot of balls back when she's in difficulty herself. Her defensive abilities are quite good too, and she's got phenomenal footwork for someone her size. So that should be underlined also.
Agreed. Yeah. So that's Sabalenka and kind of where she's at, and it's great to kind of do a bit of a breakdown of sort of the stars of the WTA Tour as we're going through here. So let's look at Coco Gauff and put the spotlight on her, because she's having to share the spotlight with Sabalenka in this conversation up to this point. Coco Gauff to me is a player who's got actually a very good game, but it only works when she's confident. And this week, she's got her confidence back, and that's where she's got some really good results against Mira Andreeva and then Iga Swiatek. My question, I guess the key question is, can that be sustained? I mean, looking at previous history, given she loves clay, I don't see why not. But what's your read on it?
No, I agree with you. Why not? One thing that I think we keep not forgetting, but we keep putting in the back row because we're talking about the dynamics with other players, and Coco being at the top of the game now for a couple of years, along with a few other players, and her winning the U.S. Open, etc., is that she's still only 21, and she's just put her foot inside the door recently compared to many other players. And let's give Coco Gauff a couple of more years, 3 more years, at this level, and give her time to develop her game, which she has been over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, I'm looking at her serve. Her serve gets criticized every once in a while now too, but compared to where it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there's a big improvement. And her footwork is great, just like you said. She needs confidence, but then again, that would be the case for most players. It's just that the gap maybe between her confident play and her non-confident play may be larger. Okay, that's acceptable too. But I'm a big Coco Gauff fan in what she has done in her young age and what she has done over the last 2 or 3 years in the development of her game. And I see her just getting better and better because she's 21, but she's already quite experienced, and she's got a great head on her shoulder, great character, very mature. For me, everything that she says pre-match, after match, in interviews point to a very intelligent young woman, and she has been that way for years. Even her interviews when she was a teenager show me that she's got a great head on her shoulders, high IQ player. So yes, there's a lot of upside, and she can only go up from here.
And it's the IQ, I think, that has got her to the top of the game as quick as she has. I mean, we talk a lot about athleticism as her biggest strength, and her being the best athlete on the WTA Tour, but her match mentality and her fight and her drive every time she plays, she will not back down. Even when she's playing badly, this is why she has the reputation for winning ugly that she has, because she won't go away unless she's having a really shockingly bad day or you're playing extremely well. And so I think that's something that will always stay with Gauff. That's what she's going to make a tremendous competitor. That's what's going to make her a contender for pretty much every slam that she enters.
And also when she, a lot of times as coaches, we are envious of players or working with players whose standards are, let's say, over 10. You have some players who can play at 10 and beat anybody in the world, and once in a while they'll drop down to a 5 or 4 and have bad losses. And then you have these other players who may never reach 10 necessarily, or who have not yet reached 10, but they're constantly in that 7 to 9 level, and they're super reliable. They never drop below that 7 level, which is a good level. Okay, so Coco Gauff is a good version of that. Yeah. And I think this final was a very good example where she's playing against a tremendous player, hitting winners, playing great, but yet Sabalenka has one small dip, and Coco is right there to jump on it and make it a set in the second set. So she just stays there, with you.
Yeah, absolutely, she is. And I wanted to ask you a question based on something you just said, which is, looking at that sort of development. And so we're saying, yeah, Coco's still got a way to go, like a little way to go, being only 21. What is there a typical age for a player where you kind of said, no, their game's kind of got as far as it can get? I don't see anything that could be if any change is going to happen, that's it. There's nothing you're going to change from this point.
No, I used to. I'm at a point, Nick, where I think age is overrated in tennis in many aspects. The players now, players are proving that you can peak at the age of 19, 25, 28, 32, 33. You have players reaching career highs after they're 30. And the big three proved that after 30 you can improve your game and add fastest to your game. Serena showed it for years and years. You can improve like crazy, and so I think age is a little bit overrated, and you can. I'm not sure that there is an age where you can improve more than at some other age. Okay, so of course, if you have a certain shot whose fundamentals are not set yet, of course, then you might hone in on that particular shot and see a big jump or big improvement on the level of that shot. But that could happen when you're 20. I mean, if you haven't taken care of that shot until you're 27, you've done a bad job to start with. But at 27, all of a sudden, when you jump on it, you might have a great improvement. But that could also happen at 24 or 20. So no, the short answer to your question is, in my opinion, no.
Well, I was expecting that answer because as I was asking it, I immediately got players jumping to mind like Alina Svitolina,
there
who
you go.
in her late 20s comes back, adds a lot more to the forehand. Or in most recent example, Maddie Keys putting everything together that she needed to finally win a Grand Slam earlier this year. And everything finally clicking and doing that little bit extra to get it over the line.
Yeah, you see that even in lower levels, right? A player like Emina Bektas reaches top 100 at the age of 30. You know, that's something that she probably has been shooting for all her career, and she reached it after 30. That's just one example out of 25 that we can pull out if we put our heads into it.
Right. I'm picking up a lot of stuff I'm jumping back on for points wise, and hopefully Coco Gauff fans feel like we've covered her enough here. But I want to pick up on something you said about those players who kind of are consistently always in that 7 to 8 level. Would you also count Iga Swiatek as being one of those players, given that for what is considered an off season, she keeps getting to quarters or semis?
Yes, I would. Now, I know that Swiatek fans, because when you're a fan, you're never fully satisfied, right? When you with your player, unless they win everything. And in the case of Iga's fans, they're used to their player winning everything, so they may feel very depressed right now, so to speak, with seeing that what's been happening. But even Iga at this level is still not below a 7. You know, if we're going to go with those metaphorically with the numbers that we presented, she will, in my opinion, even at this level, she's pretty much guaranteed a top 5 spot. She'll probably go far in in both Rome and the French Open. Now, if there's any more dipping, or if there's any more loss of confidence and a further loss of further losses, a couple of bad losses, and maybe, God forbid, a small injury comes in and she has to take off a few weeks. You know, a lot of bad things can happen in a row to bring a player down. If those happen, okay, sure. But right now, to answer your question, at this point, even with her losing in the semifinals to Coco Gauff, I would not put her below 7, you know, from the scale that we've talked about. Yeah, I think she's still at a 7, if not an 8.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I've seen some people putting her at like a 5 or a 6, or you know, if you want to put that kind of scale of it. And like that, the trouble is, I think I said this in a recent podcast, you're kind of comparing climbing different mountains. You're comparing her being able to climb Everest to being able to climb a different mountain altogether that's definitely shorter.
Yes.
Like it's still very hard to get to these these kind of results consistently, but as you say, well, we're used to winning more often, and she's more used to winning more often. So obviously she's going to be frustrated. I mean, you as a coach, obviously, have you had a player who's like feels like they should be doing better and they're just not? They go on a bit of what they feel like is a rough patch, even if the results are good.
Oh, of course. Yes. I think everybody's answer, every coach's answer, or even a tennis fan, his answer to that would be yes. Every player goes through this. They, especially the ones that have had a period of success followed by a period of a dip, you know, they will of course feel that way. The problem is if you have someone who says this after 25 out of 27 matches they play. Oh, I didn't play my best. If I played my best, I would have done this. Oh, once again, I didn't play well. Oh, I sucked today. Okay. You know, that's when you need to worry. But to have players, once in a while come off the court and say, I didn't play up to my potential today. What am I doing? I cannot believe this. That's understandable.
Yeah. A lot of people who aren't necessarily behind the scenes and are just watching what's going on court with Iga are kind of going on the lines of kind of watching how she's acting emotionally, seeing what kind of decisions she's making during the match. A lot of armchair coaching, I will call it. Especially for like those people like myself who have no experience even trying to do this, or seeing how her emotions were, particularly during that Coco Gauff match.
Nick, don't sell yourself short. I haven't seen you do any armchair coaching. Your comments are right on point normally.
I'm trying to, I try and know my limits. But this is what I'm trying to get to with this point about Iga at the moment is I feel very uncomfortable talking about players and where they are mentally because you don't know that, because only them and their team will know that. And unless they're open about it, like Casper Ruud's been recently, you're never going to 100% know what's going on with a player and how they're approaching it. And I've been having this thought, and I wanted to know how close I am with my thoughts on this, Mert, would be, we've talked about mentality as being more like a weapon, like a forehand in tennis for many, many years. I'd say decades. Like that's something I've noticed when listening to tennis commentary ever since I was a kid. But is it more accurate to say that mentality and mental health is more closer to managing your body so that you're able to hit a forehand or do whatever you need to do on a tennis court? And we need to rethink maybe if there's a loss of form, it's because there's management of other things that need to go on rather than a sign of weakness.
Yes, the confidence can disappear in many ways, right? I mean, one of the ways is maybe you played one bad tournament and you lose your confidence. Maybe you missed the same shot on 4 different break points in one match, so you lose your confidence in that one particular shot. Just like if you're at a down period in your form cycle and you all of a sudden play one fantastic tournament, you win it, and boom, your confidence is back up. So yes, these are inside the court related things that can make you win or that can make you gain or lose confidence. But then there's also, off court stuff. And so that unfortunately we don't, it becomes more of a speculation on someone's part to say what's happening off court. Now, if, for example, in Iga's case, if I'm not mistaken, she received the news of the death of her grandfather before the tournament. Am I correct? And she was already there, and she flew back for the funeral, and then she flew back to Madrid to prepare. This is what I've heard. I'm not.
I've seen that going around from a relatively reputable source.
So that's a tough situation. That's a tough situation. And now you might say, for someone who may not have watched every match, might say, well, but she won, matches and she went all the way to the semis. So that obvious, no, she did not play well. She did not play well this whole tournament, all the way up to the semis. The match before, she was not at the level that we're used to seeing her. She on clutch points, she made some uncharacteristic errors. In that loss to Gauff, she missed shots not by 2 inches, 1 inch, but rather by 2 feet, 3 feet. She missed some shots wide into outside the court, outside the doubles alleys. So this was a whole different topic. Now we can make an educated guess that the death of her grandfather had an impact on her, negative impact on her, and but her also. That is not to say that we should, slide under the rug maybe some other signs. I mean, what I'm seeing from Iga is not that she lacks fight. Her effort level is not any less. Even against Gauff, when she was down a set and 5 love, she was still fighting. But the determination or the confidence or the yes, I got this, or I'm going to climb back into this match type of look that she has usually, lacked at any moment during that match, even when the score was at still, 1-love in the beginning of the sets. She just looked down. She looked like she lost belief in her shots, and she looked like this player who thinks, when is this nightmare going to end? When am I going to start playing better? That's so. Again, I'm speculating, of course, just from observation, but that's the type of lack of confidence that I see from Iga. And yes, it does affect your shots, because maybe you try to be too conservative, maybe play with larger margins inside the line, because you're thinking, okay, I'm not playing well, I'm missing a lot, so let me keep it more inside the court. And maybe that doesn't fit your personality or your tennis identity. You're more of an aggressive player, and maybe you'll end up making more mistakes if you try to hit conservatively, because you take off the racket head speed, which maybe then takes off the top spin, and the ball doesn't have as much spin on it and rolls outside the court. There are a lot of many little things that can happen when you lose confidence, and yes, it can affect your stroke production.
Yeah, absolutely. If you lose your timing, especially when you look at Iga's forehand as a stroke, like to generate that much spin,
Very good example.
You play with the lines, you mistime it, it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. And I think your speculation is kind of similar to mine, because watching Iga win, often when she loses, there's a definite sense of frustration that what she usually does that works isn't working in that moment. And I get the sense from Iga, and to be fair, I think probably also from some comments that Wim Fasset's made and that she's made, that she is a player who very much believes that her A game is enough to win her any match that she plays, provided she can get it to work. And I guess, is that, from a coaching perspective, is that a helpful way of thinking potentially, or is it have you seen other players have that kind of mindset before? This is obviously speculation based on what we've heard, but so I guess I'll let you come in on how plausible you think that might be.
Yeah, the answer to your question on a general level, I'd say no, that's not a very healthy way of thinking. But if we were to go back to that period of 2 years of dominance with Iga, the answer would be yes. But now I'm going to tie this back to the discussion about Sabalenka that we had earlier. Now Swiatek's A game at her best, I'm not sure that it beats Sabalenka's A game at her best. In fact, based on the discussion we just had about what Sabalenka has added to her game, I think she's half a step ahead of Swiatek in terms of the variety that she's added to her game, to Sabalenka's game. So no, a player should not feel like they can be the best in the game if they just play their best. A player should always look to find some facet of the game that's perhaps an inch or two behind. If you draw a graph, and you have many, many little lines for every facet of the game, and then you have one line that's a little bit shorter than the other, there will always be one or two. If we're speaking on these metaphoric terms in tennis, you should push to bring that line to the same level as all the other lines, if not, go over the other lines.
Just to jump on your comment about sort of the Swiatek-Sabalenka dynamic, obviously we haven't seen that since Cincinnati, and your comment there about sort of maybe Sabalenka at her best beats Swiatek at her best as of right now. Is that still surface dependent?
Yes. I think on a fast hard court, I see 10 matches between the two of them playing at their best, both of them playing at their best, and I see Sabalenka winning 7 or 8 of them out of 10. But you put the same on a slow clay court, then I see perhaps Swiatek winning, more than 5, if not 5. Grass, I'm not sure. I would favor Sabalenka again. But yes, I think it is. It is a bit surface dependent. Yes.
Fair. Okay. I think we've covered the kind of the big 3 stories from the tournament. And appreciate we're probably limited for time here. So I just want to maybe run through a couple bullet points, sort of thoughts on it. Alina Svitolina is the other semi-finalist. Thoughts on her season so far? She seems to be putting together something pretty consistent, and I'm fairly optimistic of her challenging for a top 10 spot this year if she keeps this up.
Yes, Nick, I'm going to throw in a couple other names with Svitolina too, just to kind of bounce back also on the point that there's a good nucleus of players now in the WTA who are improving, right? Doing better. Madison Keys is having a great year so far this year by the standards of our previous years. You got Mira Andreeva now entering top 10, great player, and Svitolina is back on fire. She's having a great year. So you take out Sabalenka, Swiatek, and even Gauff, you still have a good group of players there who can play well. And I think in a tournament like Madrid, this showed. A lot of earlier round matches were a pleasure to watch too. So yes, Svitolina. Going back to Svitolina, let's see if she can actually reach the quarterfinals or do better in Roland Garros, because I guarantee you, as much as she's getting praised right now, if she loses in the round of 16s at the French Open on a heartbreaker, this whole talk about her, okay, here we go again. In the big stages, in the slams, she doesn't. In the majors, she still hasn't gone to semifinals. It's the same Alina that we've always seen, etc., etc. So let's wait a little bit more and see. But I am thoroughly enjoying Svitolina this year so far.
All right. Well, you were talking about, we had some really good matches, particularly early parts of Madrid. Do you have any particular nominees or one in mind for match of the tournament on the WTA side?
The Bancic's match against Haddad Maia, and I know that this wasn't. I don't think this was even shown on Tennis Channel Plus. I watched it through. I watched it online. I just had time, so I sat down and watched that match. But I thought it was a terrific match. I don't know if I can call it match of the tournament because it's an earlier round match, but it had everything, comebacks and so forth. And there's one other that I know I'm missing, Nick. You say, help me out here.
Yeah,
it was a comeback match.
In my mind, Sabalenka Kostyuk was, even though it was two tiebreakers didn't go 3, that was quite exciting, and there was a possibility of that going a third. And we were on the edge of I was on the edge of my seat watching the end of that.
Yes, no, I agree with you. That was a great match, and I think Kostyuk had a match earlier against Kudermetova. That was also Potapova Kenin.
Yes, I saw a lot of hype. I missed that match, but I saw a lot of hype for it.
Yes, it was from beginning to end, because I have trouble watching a match just through highlights or watching 2 games and then coming back next set and watching. I try to watch these matches from beginning to the end because I want to see the shifts, and that was a pleasure to watch from beginning to the end.
Yeah, that was a really, really good match. And again, Kostyuk is a player that, it's okay. She's maybe not hitting quite the same highs as she was last year, but she's definitely remaining a consistent presence on tour, which is.
Isn't she a great athlete? I mean, she's just such a great athlete. And Nick, don't forget, Naomi Osaka is back. She won her WTA 125 title in San Malo. So let's see if she can pull another match like she did last year at French Open against
Swiatek. Had a decent field in that 125.
Yes. The main draw from the second round on was quite difficult. Yes.
Yeah. So for her to win a clay court title, which was virtually a 250, is actually pretty impressive. And hey, look, we know she could play on clay after when she pushed Swiatek last year at the French. So but yes, you're right.
She's not even the highest ranked Japanese player, by the way. Ushijima is. Yes.
Uchijima, big breakthrough tournament for her.
Incredible tournament, yes. No, I can't really say. To me, it comes as a big surprise. I've been a big fan of her for 2 years, but okay, of course, it comes as a surprise that she reached the quarterfinals here in Madrid. That's a surprise to me also. But I knew that she was capable of beating some of the best players, but not have so many in a row.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Uchijima is a name I've been watching climbing the rankings for quite some time. I've never quite been able to catch a match with her until this tournament.
She had a great stretch last year where she won 3 or 4 ITF 100s and 75s in a row. So she had her first big jump then. And now this, towards the end of last year and this year so far, she's having that second big jump that follows the first big jump. But I can tell you a very quick story. This is one of the most, how some players are so worried about courts, balls, this, that, traveling, what room I'm staying in, or my bed does, etc. This is one of the more relaxed, casual people out there. She's a great girl. And last year we were in Trnava, and she won a tournament in Japan. I believe it was in Japan or Korea. Was it? Anyway, she won a tournament in Asia, Far East. And she took a flight and arrived to Trnava, that you don't fly into, by the way. You have to fly into Bratislava and then catch a ride to Trnava. And she arrived around 4:00 in the afternoon after traveling 24 hours or so. And she had to get out and play a match the next day. And we were talking to her. She's like, "It's okay, I'll just sleep it off and go out and play." And it was from hard court to clay, by the way.
Wow.
And she goes out and wins the match, and she wins the tournament. She won, and then she went. She went on to the next tournament in Spain, I think, and she won that one too. So a lot of it's great. It's great. I'm very happy for her.
One of the best work ethics on tour.
Yes,
at the end of it, which is
yes,
and she kind of have to.
She's got good variety on her game, and her game suits clay, which is not that common among Japanese players.
No, it's not. I think you're right. I think they did have some clay in Japan at one point, but yeah, you're right. They're more you see Japanese players performing better on hard courts. Although Kei Nishikori wasn't half bad on the men's side.
No, you're right. You're right. Nishikori was an exception to the rule too.
All right. I think that should about wrap up discussions about Madrid. Mert, is there anything else that you think we need to make sure we mention before we sign off on how things were from Madrid?
Yeah, the only thing that I'd like to mention, and I think when this type of thing happens, it needs to be mentioned, or at least because I find it commendable. I read on European media that I didn't read it anywhere in American media, but I read on European media that the Madrid organizers reimbursed fully everyone who bought tickets to that one blackout day. And if I'm not wrong, there was a little bit of tennis played that day, before the blackout came and they canceled their match. So I think it's great that a tournament takes the responsibility, even if it may not be their fault. The blackout may not be the tournament organizer's fault, but they went ahead and reimbursed every ticket holder fully. And I think that should be underlined and noted because it's quite commendable.
Well done, Madrid, for doing that. Yeah, absolutely. Especially, as you said, they got to see some tennis, but I guess it's kind of a good word, especially given what Spain went through, and that Monday was one of those stark reminders that tennis is not the only thing that matters in the world. When there's bigger things happening and there's people going without power and everything just shuts down, it's like the least you can be annoyed about is that the tennis isn't on.
Yes, it's so true. And I also think it was nice of a couple of players, not all of them said this, but a couple of players to mention that, to thank the organizers for still finding, in that hectic environment, to find the time to take them back to the hotel. They had to wait a little bit at the courts, in the right there without lights. They weren't in, but at one point, despite apparently the authorities saying don't move, stay where you are for a little while, after a couple of hours or a few hours, they took the players back to their hotel rooms, and then those players thanked the organizers for doing that on TV, which I think just represents a good camaraderie.
Yeah, and again, that seems to be a tournament that at least looks after, maybe is growing and changing given its previous reputation, which is a good thing. All right, Mert, last question. What is the story? What is the main story or stories that you're going to be looking out for in Rome? We don't have a draw yet, but what are we keeping an eye on in Rome?
Mira Andreeva. The nucleus of Mira Andreeva, Svitolina, and one other, Coco Gauff, and see how they are going to challenge Swiatek and Sabalenka. See if we're, which one of them can beat Swiatek or Sabalenka and perhaps reach for the title. Because I'm expecting a Swiatek-Sabalenka final in Rome.
Repeat, which would be a repeat of last year. Yeah. We're overdue one. Since I think the last final they played was Rome last year. Last match they played obviously was Cincinnati last year. So yeah, you're right. That's a really good point. I guess Gauff is certainly, we know her clay court prowess. and she's beaten Andreeva and Swiatek this week. So let's see if she repeats something like that. Svitolina, we know, is a thorn in the side of both. And Mira Andreeva's proved to be a thorn in the side of both this year. I guess, like, it's one of those things for me. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm actually putting a 17-year-old, no, now 18-year-old in with almost the same category as these players. And
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't
But it's
like
well
adding
justified.
that
Yeah.
expectation, but she is that good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, yeah, we've got to be thinking about whether she's a contender for the French Open.
Is Osaka playing Rome? Is she in the qualifying?
I think.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't. That's something I should know coming into this. But
yeah, good question. I'm sure a producer can maybe find out, or I can get it on my phone.
Yeah, we'll find out. It's no big deal because I'm not that I'm expecting great things from Osaka and Rome by any means, but I'd be curious to see how far she goes or who she loses to if she is playing Rome, of course. You know,
if she is playing, I mean, I would be surprised if she wasn't quick. Scan out the qualifying, see if I see a Japanese flag. I do not see a Japanese flag on the qualifying matches.
Maybe she's got maybe she's got a wild card. I mean, who knows? Who knows?
Maybe.
We'll see. We'll find out.
I think maybe her ranking's high enough to get in.
That's
maybe.
right. Yeah, that's true too. That's true too.
Yeah.
Right.
So here we go. Rome draw tomorrow, noon. Should be exciting. But thank you always for coming on. I always learn so much when I talk to you, and
thank you,
everyone
Nick.
doesn't mind having a more technical episode this week. But I so very rarely get to talk to someone who I trust to give me the ins and outs of how the pro game works. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Nick. Much appreciated.
All right, fantastic. Okay, and for the rest of you, thank you for watching. Thank you for contributing. To one particular commenter in the chat, I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about Peyton Stearns. Maybe another time. But for this week, we're going to sign off. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to round off the Rome tournament. We do have an ATP Weekly, time TBC, but keep an eye out for that when that comes out this week to wrap up what's happening on the men's side with Ruud wrapping up. We've got Mario bringing us behind the scenes from Rome this week, which will be really exciting for content, and we'll do a full draw preview tomorrow. Thanks everyone for coming along. Take care and keep talking tennis.